Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for the final 2019 movie review that I'm going to be doing. If you guys notice, it's taken a while for me to finally get to this point. That's mainly because of this film that recently came out that I knew I wanted to be the last 2019 movie I review, and I knew I was going to have to wait for it. And that movie, of course, is none other than 1917. So what 1917 is essentially about is we center on these two soldiers at the height of World War I, and basically they are notified by their commander that basically there's going to be this attack that is going on tomorrow from the 2nd Battalion. They're going to be attacking. However, this plan is basically a setup. The opposing side knows that they're going to attack and it's going to end in a massacre, so they have to try to deliver this message to get to the 2nd Battalion to prevent this attack from happening and saving many countless lives, basically all on their own, and we basically follow them through this treacherous journey, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, 1917, I was hyped for this film, and look, I'll just say right now, you guys know I'm not usually a huge fan of war movies. They're not my favorite genre. I find a lot of them to be very repetitive and kind of treading the same ground. However, I feel like recently we have had a slew of really great war movies, whether it was Hacksaw Ridge, whether it was Dunkirk, a couple others that I'm not thinking of, but I have to say, out of all the ones that we've had, 1917 might just be the best I've seen in years. This is an absolute thrill ride in the best way possible that you truly are not prepared for, which, I'm going to get more into, but it's absolutely one of the best of the year, and we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And look, acting-wise, there's not a lot to say here, because there are actors in this movie, but it really is just these two main guys. And both George MacKay and Dean Charles Chapman are both fantastic here. They perfectly represent the fear and paranoia that are going through these two characters, but also just the innocence of them all. I mean, these are two guys that are just trying to do what's right. They're trying to get out of this in a very safe way, but you can tell that they're not fully prepared for what they are tasked with, and they both do an incredible job for sure. George MacKay, though, I think is the big standout here for sure. He definitely has the bigger role. A lot of the film is really carried on his shoulders, and he just does such an excellent job here. Really just, again, representing that fear so well. And there's dialogue in this movie, but there's not a ton of dialogue. There's more than you'd expect, but it's a very visual performance, and you can really see just how caught off guard they are throughout the movie, and they both just do such an incredible job here. It's very hard to pull off what they do in this movie, and they both do it so effortlessly, and it's definitely some really great acting for sure. And look, yes, there's other actors in this movie like Mark Strachan and Colin Firth and Benedict Cumberbatch and Andrew Scott and people like that. But there's not really a lot for them to do. They're only in like one or two scenes each, and I'm not saying like that's a bad thing. Like, they have the role that they need to have, but don't expect a lot from those actors because they're really just extended cameos. This is very much MacKay and Chapman's film. They are the ones that we follow around the most. They are the ones who stick out in terms of acting, and I think overall they did a really good job with that, and I think the cast overall, everyone just did a really spectacular job here. But we gotta get into the things I really love about this movie, which really this entire film is pretty much anchored by our director here, and that's Sam Mendes, who I thought handled this perfectly. I was so impressed by his directing here, and look, I've always loved him with things like American Beauty, Skyfall, even Spectre, which I'm a much bigger fan of than most people. I just think he is a phenomenal director, and 1917 is absolutely some of his best to date. I mean, just the way that he instills so much fear and so much emotion out of you in this movie, he does such an excellent job with, but you can tell he also has a lot of respect for World War I and really trying to recapture that era as accurately as possible, and I think he does a really great job with that here. And just the way he was able to pull off what he did in this movie, I don't understand how it turned out as well as it did, but his directing here I thought was just so solid. I love the way it was handled. It's definitely some of the best of the entire year. And he absolutely deserved that directing win that he got at the Golden Globes, because it truly is a real achievement. Because again, with war films, it can be very hard to, have your own voice to them because they've been done so many times before. But Mendes finds a way to reinvent it in such a spectacular manner, and I thought he did such a great job with that here. And the writing in this film is also really great. And that's something I think not enough people are talking about, is that, yes, the film is very much a thriller item. We'll get into the main reason why, but I think the writing is very solid here. Yes, is this concept simple? Absolutely, but it's what they do with it. That's what really makes this writing stick out, because almost every single time these guys think that they're going to be okay, something ends up going sideways, whether it's they're not quiet enough, or there's a noise that is threatening them, or there's there's an object that is threatening to expose their cover. I mean, there's always something that is getting in the way of them being able to protect themselves from enemy lines, and so you are always on edge throughout the film, and that is the best kind of writing with something like this. That is absolutely what you want out of a film like this, because it constantly is keeping you on your toes. And even quieter moments, like there's a scene with MacKay and this girl that he runs into, and it's kind of a really sweet scene. But even in that moment, while you're so wrapped up in it, you're still worried that something bad is going to happen. You're always worried that they are going to, end up in the worst situation possible, because there's wars going on, there's gunshots happening, there's enemies, left and right at all times. They're never truly safe, and I think that's what's so great about the writing here. They really do a great job with that, and I've heard a lot of people complain that we don't get enough character with these two. There was actually more than I was expecting. For MacKay especially, they give a lot more character to him. It's subtle, for sure. They don't spend a lot of time on it, but you get just enough to care about this situation. Chapman is here because he has a brother, as we know, in the 2nd Battalion, and he is, feels that it is his duty to protect his brother. He needs to do this right away, and that's his motivation, pretty much. Whereas for MacKay, he has another reason for doing it that I'm not going to get into because there's no trailer that's, spoiled it or anything, but he has another reason for why he needs to, why he is so adamant about making sure this mission goes right. Not just because he wants to protect everyone. It goes kind of beyond that. And I thought the writing was very solid there for sure. Like I said, I thought the screenplay was just fantastic here. It's definitely one of the best that I've seen in any war films in a while. And considering that there's a lot of minimal dialogue, and that it isn't a film that solely relies on, a lot of, conversation and things like that, I still found the story to be highly engrossing and always kept me invested. There was not a single time in this movie where it lost me. I was laser focused pretty much the entire time, and they did such an excellent job with that. But it's the cinematography here. That's what really sticks out about this film. I mean, every single thing going on technical-wise here blew me away. I was so stunned throughout this entire movie, in a state of shock of how they were able to put this together. I cannot imagine just how nerve-wracking that must be to make sure that this goes as well as possible and make sure this goes as seamlessly as possible, because yes, are there points in this movie where you can tell that they're cutting, which, I mean, again, we'll get into with the editing, but what Deakins is able to do here is nothing short of extraordinary. Every single shot is crafted so perfectly. The different environments that we go into, they all stick out. They all have a very distinctive feel to them. It also has this sense that we're right there. I mean, the film really just puts you right into that situation. I don't mean it as where it feels so realistic that you feel like you're there. No, the way they handle it, we're really just watching these two guys go across, going on this mission, and every single step, you feel like you're stepping there with them. Every single situation they're in, you feel like you're there with them. Every time they're worried, you're worried. Every time they're scared, you're scared. You get what I'm saying. It's very very personal in that way, and the way that he was able to structure all of that. I mean, we already know that Deakins is a master at this shit, but this is easily some of his most impressive to date, with just the way he was able to pull all of this off. The set design, things like that. It's truly immaculate, and I don't know how it turned out as well as it did. I kept thinking, pretty much throughout the whole movie, of how this could have gone so wrong. This could have been a complete disaster if not handled correctly, and it's absolutely the right approach. And I don't want to hear anyone say that, like, oh, it's a gimmick. I don't think it's a gimmick at all. I think it's absolutely what you needed this movie to be, because it's a constant adrenaline rush. Like I said, there's not much room to breathe in that way. And I think that the cinematography really plays a big part in that, and just how real everything does feel, and especially when it comes to the attack sequences. I mean, look, this isn't a film where there's constantly action going on, and that's what may surprise you, is that there's not constantly action going on. I mean, there are some very significant action scenes for sure. It's more the tension that ruminates throughout the entire movie, and I think that's what really sets 1917 above the rest, in my mind, definitely. And there are definitely some scenes, though, that are so exhilarating to watch. The one you've seen in the trailer with, like, MacKay running away from the explosions, it's even more intense in context. It's even more viscerally nerve-wracking in context, and I thought that he did such an excellent job with that. Deakins just continues to show why he's one of the best cinematographers out there, and I gotta say, I really hope he's the front runner to win Best Cinematography, because, look, I know he won it for Blade Runner 2049, but I really do think that this should be his second win, because it is probably... I mean, there's a Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I said was my favorite, but I think this might have just beat it. I really do. I really do think this might have just beat it for Best Cinematography of the Year, because what he was able to pull off, I just thought was so masterful here, and I have no idea how it turned out quite as well as it did, and that just hats off to him for being able to do it. However, I think the other thing that really makes this film stick out in terms of immersion is Thomas Newman's score, which is just so masterfully handled here. And similar to other films I've reviewed last year, it almost feels like a character of its own. It perfectly represents the tension throughout the entire movie. It starts off very minimal, almost like background noise. There's always tension, but it's very minimal. And then the more the film goes on, though, the louder and the more bombastic it really does become. And it really represents the severity of what these characters are getting into, and when things start to become even more tension-filled, and when, we start to get more into when he gets closer, when they both get closer to enemy lines and things like that, that's when the score starts to get a lot more powerful in that way. And it might just be my favorite score of last year. It honestly might just be. And look, there's a lot of scores that I loved from last year, but I came out of this movie and I listened to the score right away. I had to listen to it again, because it just has such a distinctive feel to it. There's also something really dreamlike about it as well at many key points throughout the film, and I just thought he did an excellent job with it. It's definitely some of his best work to date. He's done a lot of scores, mind you, but this is definitely some of his best work for sure. And again, if he wins for best score, I would absolutely be behind it, because he did a fantastic job, I think, scoring this film, giving it really this, again, giving it this really suspenseful feel throughout the whole thing, and I thought he did such a great job with that. And of course, the editing. That's something that a lot of people are going to talk about and pass off as a gimmick, and I really don't think it is at all. I think that's a very unfair way to compare it, because look, yes, the film is doing the 2-for-1 shot thing, and that is very impressive on its own, but when you watch the movie, it really, I don't think there's another way to pull it off, because you're with these characters the whole time. There isn't a time to cut back to anything else that's going on, and while there are scenes where, yeah, you can tell maybe they cut there, there was one point when it faded to black, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can tell they cut there. The illusion never fades out. Like, you're still convinced that this was done in one take. They still do it so seamlessly, and I love the way it was handled here. It's definitely one of the best experiments that I've seen in quite a while, because, again, I kept thinking of how this could have gone so wrong, but when you're watching the movie and you're seeing the characters go through this very perilous journey, you don't really realize, when they're cutting. You don't feel like they should cut at any point, and you keep waiting for them to cut, and they don't, and that's what's so impressive about it. That's what really was sticking out about to me. I wasn't looking for them to cut, that's not what I was looking for. I was looking for when they're gonna cut. That's what I kept thinking about, is like, when are they actually going to cut here? Is there going to be a point when they do, and then they don't? And that, it's just, I don't know how they were able to pull it off as well as they did. Guys, I think I've gushed about enough. 1917 is absolutely one of my favorites of the entire year. It's such a unique and suspenseful ride that really puts you into this situation, and not just puts you in, it makes you really feel this situation. You are with these characters, with some amazing performances, some absolutely stunning and just immeasurable cinematography, a extremely powerful score, some amazing editing. Ultimately makes 1917 truly, I think, a real classic. I think years from now, when we're thinking about great war films, I think 1917 will definitely be in that conversation, and it absolutely should be, because it is one of the most well-handled of its kind for sure. It's definitely one of my favorites of the year, and I think I've gone about it long enough, guys. I'm definitely going to give 1917 overall an A+. Look, there's been a lot of great films from this year, for sure, but trust me, this is one that is not to be missed. You guys gotta see this on the biggest and loudest screen possible. It will definitely, it's definitely a true experience for sure, and it's one that is for sure not to be missed, and also just such a fantastic way to end one of the best years for movies in recent history. And guys, finally, I know you guys have been waiting patiently, but trust me, it is coming after this video. I will finally be getting up my best movies of 2019 list. Hey, I already got up my worst list, so at least you guys had that. But I know it's been a while. I'm finally going to get it up, and you guys will get to see it then. And I'm very excited to finally share that with you guys. So definitely look forward to that. But either way, guys, from our review of 1917, let me know what you guys saw this one overall. Love your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video. And we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.